Hi, readers. So, in our session today for LA, I want to talk to you about another part of being a good and sophisticated reader of fantasy, what we need to do as the reader to help us better understand the more complicated novels and just the stories in general that we're reading. Now, last time we talked, we learned about how, as readers, a lot of times in fantasy novels, we are learning alongside the main character, which means that as the character finds information out, we as readers are also finding that out. Okay, and I use that example of Lucy and how she didn't know anything about Narnia, just as we as readers didn't know. And as she learned what Narnia was, so did we. Okay, we also talked about researching the setting, and we know that in our read aloud Lion Witch in the Wardrobe that it's not a futuristic world, it's not a medieval world, right? But it's a magical world that is within our own world, and there's a wardrobe or a way to get to it from our world. Okay, so we know that we researched the setting and we understand now that we're going to learn alongside the main characters. The next part that we have to look at is keeping track of multiple problems. So as we get into these more difficult texts and in the years to come, as you read more books, you're going to notice that it's just not one simple little problem that a character has to face. Sometimes there are layers and layers of problems, almost kind of in a way that we see in our own lives. Okay, I can give you an example. For me, think about this. Have you ever set out to solve something and then it just seems like the problems pile up? Do you remember I told you that story about the duck eggs that I got from school, from Peter Muschel, actually? It was my first year teaching, and the custodian, it wasn't Miss Carol, it was another lady named Miss Dottie. She came to me and she said, I know that you live near a lake. I have this mama duck and all of these eggs, and the animals are trying to get it. Do you think you could take them to your house and let them go by the lake? And what was I supposed to say? She came into my classroom with this big crate with a mama duck and a nest and 12 eggs. So I said, sure, sure, sure. I called my mom because I still lived with my mom. I wasn't, married or anything at that point. And my mom said, okay, sure, we'll take care of it. Well, that's one problem. I just have to get rid of this duck and these eggs, right? Oh no. I kept running into so many problems. The first problem was that the mama duck, as soon as I opened the crate, she flew away. I'm not kidding, she quacked at me and then she flew away. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do with all of these duck eggs? So I left them there in the cage that she could easily get in. I thought maybe she'd come back. She never came back. It was getting dark. So I had a heat lamp because my sister used to have a lizard. So we had this big glass tank and a heat lamp. So we put the duck eggs in the tank with the nest and the heat lamp, and I hatched all those eggs. Okay, but I kept running into problems because once those eggs hatched, and there were two that were difficult. We had to really hold them tight and keep them warm in order for them to hatch. So then I had all these ducklings. And then I had to wake up every few hours and feed them. And I had one that wasn't gaining weight. It was just problem after problem. Now, I know that seems silly compared to, what our friends in Narnia are going through. But I just wanted you to realize that sometimes you have to keep track of these problems. All right? Okay, so before I talk too much, let's continue on. So we know that in books, characters in more complicated books can run into many problems and plot lines. Now, you know that a plot is the events that happen in a story, right? And they don't always go smooth. They kind of can jump up and down. Things can be going good and then they're going really bad. Just when you think there's a problem that's solved, another one pops up. Okay? So it's a really good idea to keep track of these problems in charts, timelines, or graphic organizers. Now I'll show you what I normally do. And if we were at school, I'd have a chart like this hanging up. And we would be going through some of the problems as a class. and talking about what the characters are going through. So here are some problems for Lucy. The first problem is no one believes her about Narnia, right? She goes into the wardrobe, she discovers Narnia, and then she comes out and nobody believes her. So that's a huge problem. Now, we did already come up with a solution. The solution was that her brothers and sister were able to get into there and now they believe her. Okay, but Lucy faced a lot of problems. Another problem Lucy faced was Edmund when he lied. Okay, that was a big problem for Lucy, it sort of shut her down. Mr. Tumnus has problems. He befriends Lucy, gets kidnapped by somebody. Okay. And, you know, he had other problems in there. He had internal conflict that he was dealing with because he was going to turn Lucy over to the White Witch. And of course, we have Edmund. I mean, it seems like his problems never end, right? Not only is he sneaky and mean to his siblings, but he also gets into Narnia, talks to the Queen of Narnia, which we have realized is the White Witch, right? And that's a problem that he has. Another problem that he has is he can't stop thinking about this Turkish delight. Okay, and what we would normally do in school is we would go through these problems and we would make a big list and we talk about the solution. And at the end of the book, we would write about how they were solved or what the status was of that problem. You'll notice that as we read more into Lion Witch in the Wardrobe, there are going to be so many problems. Think about Edmund right now. Okay, we just got done at the Beaver's house, and all of a sudden Edmund is missing. So this is a problem for Peter, Susan, Lucy, and the Beavers, really, that Edmund is missing. Okay, so they really want to go find him, but Mr. Beaver knows that that's probably not the best idea. Think about this as we're reading and as you're listening to me read, okay? And I did post that the book in that file. So if you would rather read along with me while I'm reading, that is perfectly okay. All right, so just remember that characters do have multiple plot lines, multiple problems, and it's really a good idea to track those. Now, you're not going to track them with Lion Witch, but when we get into our next fantasy story, we might talk about some different problems that the characters have and what type of solutions we might come to and what happens at the end of it. As readers, we need to think about the problems that characters face and we need to ask ourselves, how important is this problem and does it affect the character, plot, or theme? Okay, so some problems might not be that big. Some might just be little problems that aren't going to change the part of the story. But a lot of times in fantasy books and in these higher level texts, we're going to see that one little problem can totally destroy a character. We don't know what's going to happen with Edmund, but the problem of talking to the White Witch, that could potentially be really bad. I saw a lot of you in your Flipgrids, for those that did it, a lot of you said that you think that Edmund's going to betray his family and that they're not going to be able to save Narnia. All right? Imagine if this actually happens, what's going to happen to Narnia itself. Okay? Just keep that in mind as we read through, and just know that good readers and sophisticated readers of fantasy, we research the setting, we learn alongside the main characters, and we have to keep track of multiple problems. All right, let's get ready to listen to the next chapter.